What's up, everybody, and welcome to an all-new episode of Casters of Horror. I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane, and this week we're breaking down Glorious.
Glorious.
This is a Shudder original, is that?
Original.
Right.
Yes, but before we get into that, we got a little bit of
Movie news?
It always cuts out, like right at the end of your news. I don't know why. It's always like, movie news.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it must just be the stream because it always...
Maybe.
It's always just fine on the recording. So.
Oh, maybe. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad everybody can hear you.
That's right. Me
So
too.
Everybody. Shane, everyone. Shane. Woo!
Hey,
He's
me.
here. Yay, you. To start things off, remakes. A24's Crystal Lake, Friday the 13th series remake. Looks like it'll be premiering in 2024 on Peacock. So we finally got closer to a date.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes into the origins of Jason, and we'll keep you guys updated as we find out more on it. If you guys want to read a little bit more on it, I know Bloody Disgusting did a small article on it.
Yeah.
So you guys can check that out there. So, you looking forward to that one?
I'm apathetic toward that one.
Okay.
So.
I was ready for a nope. but you got a little bit of movie news.
I do.
Yeah. Following up, you're like, are you gonna check this out? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
I assumed, of course, we're talking about The Outwaters.
I'll use this as my pass before I even get to pick or pass today.
Which we talked about a couple weeks ago, and Chris was not a fan of. I was
still not a fan of.
Well, so, arguably probably our biggest split that we've had. I'm guessing on this show. But the Outwaters has both a prequel and an epilogue that has come out on Screambox. The prequel is Card Zero, and the epilogue is File VL624, which is a card that was restored by the police department, supposedly.
Oh, okay.
Don't really know.
It's all dark.
Yes. Yeah. So the Card Zero is likely to be just more shenanigans, at the house.
BS before
probably
happens. Yeah.
But I'm curious about it because I'm curious to see if there are more hints that something wrong is about to happen, because there was a bunch of like audio cues and stuff in the movie, and just
there was noises.
Yeah, there was definitely audio in the movie.
there was audio,
and then I'm assuming VL624 is just more of who knows what's going on. Nobody knows, but whatever. I know that sounds weird, but I liked it, so I will be checking these out, and we will not be checking it out on the show, but whatever.
Yeah.
You're interested in seeing more of the Outwaters?
You can fill us in on them.
Yeah.
Why not?
Check it out on Screambox. They're available now, I believe.
Nice. Well, I think that's all we had this week for movie news. See, it did it again. I wasn't even talking over you.
That's just me doing that. I go movie news.
Yeah. You just cut out every once in a while. You're like, yep. Speaking of gibberish, make sure you guys like and subscribe before we go on. No, I was gonna go into the thing, and then I was like, well. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Hit the button down below. It will make all your dreams come true. Speaking of making dreams come true, how's that for a segue? We're going to jump into the film for this week. A little film that, like we said earlier, is a Shudder original. Little film called Glorious. So I have not heard this film talked about much.
No, me neither. I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it.
Yeah, I was like, hey, this one might tickle your fancy because it's a cosmic horror one. And I was like, what am I getting myself into?
More
But
more overtly cosmic horror too in the marketing
yeah,
than like
slightly
with
more
the
perverty
Outwaters.
too.
You know, oh yeah, slightly
Yeah.
more purple. Is that what you said?
No, I said slightly more perverty too.
Oh, okay. I thought you said slightly more purple, and I'm like, yeah, there is a lot of purple in it.
There is a lot of purple. For a colorblind guy, I'm like, that's purple.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But anyway, this film was written, or it's based off a story from Todd Rigney. The screenplay was done by Joshua Hull and David Ian McKendry. This film was directed by Rebecca McKendry, who prior to this, she had directed a film called All the Creatures Were Stirring. She also did one called The Dump, and she was also an actress in Tales of Halloween. And she actually wrote one of my picks from early on in
Oh
this
really?
series. She wrote, now I completely blanked out on the name of it. Look at that. Bring It On, Cheer or Die.
Oh really?
She did. I just found that out before we
Wow.
started filming. So,
Okay.
yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
Huh.
Yeah, so if you liked this film, or even if you didn't, the writing, like I said on that, Bring It On, Cheer or Die, I thought the writing was really well done. I thought they did
Uh-huh.
a good job on that. So, or I mean, and yeah, she did a great job directing this. Anyway, it starts off. We're kind of in this ethereal realm of void.
Yeah,
Is that a good way of stating that?
I think so.
Like this?
It seems like there's like underwater and there's like bubbling
Yeah,
sounds.
you're hearing like.
Yeah.
But they're not underwater, but it sounds like it. So it's almost like kind of muffly, kind
Uh-huh.
of whatever. It's almost like a dream state, but alive. So it's kind of in between realms, almost, it seems like. Then we hear this voice, "Where are you?" And this guy's like, "I don't know." And then a woman's voice is like, "Are you thinking about me?" And he responds, "Yes, I can't stop." And then she said, "You said I was different." And then we hear this weird, like screaming noise.
Yeah.
And then we see this like orifice. It almost looks like an octopus mouth in a way. And then all of a sudden, the guy wakes up. The main protagonist of this film. He wakes up. He's driving and he veers back into his lane.
Yeah.
Okay. The main character is played by Ryan Quanten, I believe is how you pronounce his name. If not, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. He was in Kindred, Section 8, Creep Show, Sacred Lies, The Oath, Who Gets the Dog, Captain Jake and the Neverland Pirates. He was the voice of Brewster, the
Yeah,
Beast
okay.
Trapper. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I haven't heard of any of those things that he was in. But anyway, then we get the title screen. It's kind of a cool title screen because it's like sitting on the road that he's driving on, and it kind of passes along. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I like that. This gentleman pulls into a rest stop. He gets out, stretches a little bit, walks up to a vending machine that looked like it was lost in time.
Seriously.
Looks like something out of the 1970s and had not been restocked since then.
Yeah.
Very, very old single chocolate bar in it that he tries to get out, and it doesn't work. And there's this old trucker woman sitting on a park bench nearby, or a picnic table. And she says, "Some things may seem broken, but sometimes it just means you stop trying." And I was like, this is probably significant. I'm going to write it down. And she's like, "May I?" And so she comes up and she grabs another coin from him and puts it into the thing, and she gets the chocolate bar out for him. And I'm like, I wouldn't eat that.
Yeah, no kidding. You're not kidding, man. It really does look like it's like 50 years old.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world?
Then she like walks away. She's kind of smiling, and she sees this flowering plant.
Yeah.
It looks like it's almost kind of glowing and dripping stuff. I couldn't quite tell. It's glistening.
And again, I know you got the whole colorblind thing going on, but this flower is like very weird colors,
Oh yeah, it's
purple and
vibrant.
pink and
Yeah.
vibrant. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
glowing. It's
Everything
weird.
else seems very mundane and not monotone, but
Yeah,
ordinary. This seems out of the ordinary.
but she kind of like smiles or like
Yeah, she
she
smiles
smirks
at
at it
it.
almost.
Yeah, like she has an idea of what's going on.
Yeah,
Then she says to him, she's like, "You might want to clean out that back seat of your car if you plan on, this lonely life on the road, sleeping in the back of it." And he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay, thanks." He gets back into his car. There's a red box that's sitting on the passenger seat. He looks at it. Then he looks at all the stuff inside the back seat. And then there's this teddy bear sitting on the dash. He presses the hand and it makes a noise and it says, "I love you very much." And then we get these flashbacks.
very
Very
much.
much. Yeah. Yes, that's what I said.
Okay.
They may not have caught it, but I love you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we get these flashbacks of him and a woman. We're assuming it's his girlfriend. And then he starts going, why? And he's like yelling and slamming the bear onto the
Yeah.
onto the steering wheel, and it's honking the horn. And he's like, why? And then it like all of a sudden we see everything like zoom out from there, from the car up into the air, up into space, and
He
then
screams loud enough to wake up the whole galaxy.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. I figured that's what they were trying to get at.
There's also this when it comes back to him in the car,
mm-hmm.
the it almost sounds like he's damaged the bear because it kind of like glitches. But there's this weird.
Well, yeah, because he's been holding it down and hitting
like
it,
slamming it, right?
Yeah,
but,
so it sounds like it's like
yeah, but there's this like weird, scratchy, distorted voice over the sound of the bear, and I'm just thinking like, oh well, he damaged that thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But I'm not sure.
It was happening. Anyway, he ends up getting his phone out. He's like, stop it. He picks up his phone and he calls somebody. We assume it's whoever this woman was, his ex or whatever. He calls her and he's like, hey, just, wanted to hear your voice and just, blah, blah, blah. And then he calls her again.
Yeah.
And again. And finally,
and at this point, like I'm thinking, like, oh, wow, she's dead, and he wants to hear her played recording. But then he keeps leaving her like weird messages.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, I guess not.
Yeah. So he's leaving her voice messages. So I'm like, okay, and I went down that route too. Maybe she died. Maybe he just wanted to hear her voice again. Maybe it's his ex. He messed up. He had to leave, all that. So it leaves it very ambiguous to where this could go. His phone ends up dying. So instead of plugging it in, he does what any sane man does and throws it out into the parking lot. And
he gets mad at it and chucks it. He gets mad at it for being dead.
Yeah.
Just like he got mad at the 50-year-old vending machine for not working.
Yeah. And the bear, I guess.
Yeah.
So just to let you guys know, this movie is just about 80 minutes long. It's just shy of 80 minutes long. Hopefully the podcast does not go longer than the film. We will see. It ought to be interesting. Yeah. At least the part that we talk about this film.
Yeah.
Anyway, he breaks the phone. He turns on the radio loud enough that he can hear it outside of the car. Gets out a big old bottle of whiskey and proceeds to drink. He then grabs a bunch of the stuff from the back seat of the car, walks over to a fire pit that's over by the restrooms of the rest stop, proceeds to put all these items into it and lights them on fire. He has a big old bonfire for himself.
Yeah.
He gets out the red box, I would say, of memories and starts throwing pictures into the fire. So all this stuff's burning. He's just having one of those, whatever, just broke up fires, just whatever fires. Something's ending. Then he takes a picture, the one of the woman that he's been calling, the one that we saw, or that he's been called. We assume it's her. He takes it out and puts it into his pocket of his shirt. He finishes off the bottle of whiskey and passes out in the grass.
Yeah.
Then he has a dream. Once again, he's in that ethereal place, that void, whatever. And the woman from the picture is holding that red box. So you're like, okay, this red box is significant. He then proceeds to wake up. It's now morning, and he has no pants.
Yeah. Well, he has them. It's just that they're in the fire pit and like,
yes,
mostly burned away.
Mostly burned away. There's not even enough for like Daisy Dukes.
No.
Yeah, he's burned his pants. So he's just in his boxers and a button-up shirt.
Yeah.
So he takes it and he starts like dry heaving and runs into the men's restroom at the rest stop and proceeds to start vomiting in this nasty ass toilet.
Yeah.
It's stuff all over it.
And a lot. A lot of
vomiting.
He is, yes.
Yeah.
He is reversing direction of that entire bottle.
Yeah. Yeah, plus some.
Yeah.
While he's doing this, the picture of the woman, girl, whatever, falls out of his pocket onto the floor. Then we hear this voice from the next stall. Everything all right over there, my friend?
Yeah, and on his side of the stall, there's some like super creepy, but kind of neat looking art.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like this it's like this naked woman.
It's like a goddess. It's like this weird goddess of some sort.
Yeah, it's got like eyeballs on her boobs and like this weird like octopus head type thing going on. Yeah.
Yep. So we hear this voice from the other stall. Everything all right over there, my friend? He looks around and he goes, over here. And we see a glory hole on the wall. For those of you who don't know what a glory hole is, don't Google it. But a glory hole is known as a hole to stick your manhood in and have the person in the other stall do a favor for you, if you will. And around that is the painting of that weird goddess, and where her mouth is, that's where the hole is.
Yeah.
And then we hear this voice say, is that all of it? And he's like, oh, I think so. The voice that we're hearing is that of J.K. Simmons, the illustrious J.K. Simmons. Mr. We Are Farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. They are not sponsoring this, but now it sounds like they just got a free advertisement. He was known for Whiplash, Juno.
So much.
Yeah, I'm going to say he was in the early Spider-Man films. He was in the No Way Home. Mm-hmm. He played J. Jonah Jameson.
Absolute perfect casting, too.
Yeah, being the Ricardos. Did you see that? Being the Ricardos? The story about Desi and Lucy Arnaz. And
oh, no, I never saw that.
He played...
he probably played Fred.
Fred. Yeah, he played Fred. Brilliant as Fred.
Oh yeah.
He was probably the best part of that whole movie. He did so good.
And I could see him perfectly in that role too.
Oh, he was so good at that role.
He was Cave Johnson in Portal 2.
Was he now?
Mm-hmm. Really great. Again, perfect cast. Everything he is in, he is perfectly cast.
Oh yeah. And that I forgot what film he did, but that dude got ripped. I don't remember what film it, but I mean, he got, ripped. And I don't know if he still is, but that dude, he's got some muscles up underneath.
He's another one of those actors where, like, it doesn't matter what he's in, he's gonna elevate the quality of the film.
Yeah,
just by being in it.
Yep. So you're welcome, Glorious.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So, the guy proceeds to say, I think so. Sorry to bother your thing. And he's like, well, what thing? And he's like, oh, your bathroom, you know, in there. And they start having this conversation, and he's like, "Oh, is that where I'm at? The bathroom?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a toilet, there's mirrors, there's sinks. I assume I didn't see him on my way in here and all that." And he goes, "Oh, but you forgot the two most important things." He goes, "You and me, my friend." He goes, "And if I'm here and you're here, that means potential for conversation. So three things." And the guy says, "Well, I'm not much of a bathroom talker." And he proceeds to like rub his face.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, oh." He goes, "I touched, oh." And he goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "I rubbed my face and I just touched the toilet and God knows what else." And he goes, "Oh, that's a funny statement.
Yeah.
God knows what else." He goes, "Well, in that case, you've got fecal matter, semen, blah, blah, blah." And he starts naming off all these germs and
Yeah.
diseases, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he's like all these hundreds of germs. He's like, I can name them all for you if you want.
Yeah,
me to.
if you want. So they proceed to have more and more conversation, and then JK then says, "Well, we don't even know each other's names yet." And the main guy says, "Well, my name's Wes." He goes, "Well, nice to meet you, Wes." And he goes, "Can you please step back into the stall?" Because Wes is trying to wash his hands at this point. And he goes, "I'm not really into having a conversation with weird guys hanging out in stalls." And he goes, "Unfortunately, that's where I find myself stuck in this predicament." He goes, "What, like a stomach bug? I'm sure it'll work itself out." He goes, "You don't want to know my name?" He goes, "Okay. Yeah, what's your name?" And he goes, "To pronounce my name, you need to do two things. First, stick out your tongue." He goes, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Stick out your tongue. I haven't told people my name in many, many years. Stick out your tongue." And he's like, "Now grab the tip of your tongue." So yeah. He's like, "Excellent." And he says, "Now say, got another one?" So he's like, "Got another one. Got another one." And finally he ends up saying, and he goes, "That's it. You got it." And he's like, "Got another one?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's the name of a really old god." He goes, "Oh, you had hippie parents or something?" He goes, "Not exactly." He goes, "I am he." He goes, "What do you mean you are he?" And he goes, "I am that god." And you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
Meanwhile, Wes is like, okay.
Yeah. Wes is looking around. He ends up he notices that he's lost the picture. He finds it. But while he's back inside that stall, he looks through the hole to see JK over there, God. And all of a sudden you hear, "Don't do that."
Yeah.
Really, really loud. It's like this screaming and shaking and this "don't do that." And he's like, "What?" And he goes, "Attempt to look at me. This is your only warning."
Yeah. He's like, yeah, don't do that. Don't attempt to look at me.
Yeah. So Wes proceeds to climb up onto the toilet and looks over the top of the stall. And then we hear this roar, screaming sound, and it's shaking the whole room. Wes falls off the toilet and falls down and all that. And now Wes is outside.
Yeah.
And his pants are back on. And he's looking around like, what happened? And he runs quickly and gets into the car. And the girlfriend from the picture, or the woman from the picture, is in the passenger seat. She's like, "Is everything all right?" And he goes, "Yeah, baby, why?" And then she opens up her mouth and it says, "Wes, I told you not to look into the stall." And it's his voice coming out of her, and her mouth opens, and then she gets like these weird little tendril things coming out from her eyes, like in like the eye sockets and all that sort of stuff. And he wakes up and he's back on the floor in the stall. And God says, "I warned you, Wes."
Yeah.
And Wes is like, "What did you do to me? Did you drug me? Did you blah, blah, blah?" And blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Did you see her?" He goes, what do you mean, did I see her?" He says, "She's so tied to your misery. I know everything." And then Wes goes, "You need help, man." And he's like, I'm not really man or a woman. But the bathroom door is now locked. God says, we're not finished. And Wes is looking around trying to find a way out, and he sees a little window. He climbs up onto a urinal and starts yelling out the window, help, help. And then we see like this purple something like a barrier force field come up.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is that? And he's like, it's a barrier. I put it up to basically to cloak the building so nobody can find them. And then God says, are you agitated because you saw Brenda? And Wes says, what did you say? And he's starting to kind of freak out because, like, how does this guy know this woman?
Yeah, and basically at this point he thinks that he's still passed out drunk.
Yeah,
right. He's like, I'm still laying out there by the fire pit. I'm drunk and I'm passed out.
Yeah, I've got to be. It's all a dream. Pull it together. Pull it together. So he then proceeds to say, oh, I should have driven 40 more miles to the next rest stop.
Yeah.
And God says, it wouldn't have helped. He goes, why? Is there a troll living in that one?
Yeah.
He goes, no, it's an inescapable fate. Basically, you were meant to come here. We were meant to meet at this point.
Yeah.
And then you see like this goopy, slimy body, alien-like thing kind of appearing slightly under the stall.
Yeah, it's like this bulbous, like fleshy, weird that
Yeah. If you've been to Walmart, you've seen it sticking out of somebody's shirt. Like the under part of their belly just hanging out underneath. Yeah. It's like that. So Wes tries to run back, jump up onto the urinal again to get back to the window, slips and like smacks his face up against the wall, kind of almost knocks himself out. And God says, please come back to the stall. We need to talk. And he goes, I have an offer for you. And he goes, well, what if I don't like your offer? He's like, what choice do you have? He's like, you can't escape, Wes. And he says, and don't try to look at me because gazing upon me will have grave consequences. It'll make him a twisted affront to humanity, and no one will want to look at him or ever see him. And those who do see him will think of him as an abomination and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So
it's basically like what I got out of this, it seemed to be like if Wes really looked on him, then he would basically go mad, and then it would be like infectious. And anybody who looked upon Wes would then
go mad
too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So during this part of the conversation, Wes is now trying to escape again because he finds a vent cover, like a ventilation shaft.
Yeah.
Going to possibly the other bathroom, the adjoining bathroom. So he's trying to unscrew the vent cover by ripping off part of the toilet paper holder and all this, and he's trying to unscrew it. And he's like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And God says, I'm a part of this just like you. He goes, it's not up to me. And finally he gets the vent cover off. He climbs into it. He's crawling, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And then he starts climbing up, and there's a light coming from somewhere. And he's like, oh, maybe if I climb up, I can get out. Maybe it's the top of the building or something.
And God is still like talking to him this whole time.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, like, surely you must have felt that something is different in the world. There's something wrong. Something's just slightly off, like a wind that doesn't blow right, and there's just something in the air is wrong. You must have noticed it by now. Right. And Wes is just like not paying attention. He's just crawling and climbing.
Not at all. And and God's just going on and on and on and on and on. And just keeps talking. Clear to the point where when Wes gets through to where the light was, he's crawled into a bathroom.
Yeah.
Another bathroom. Or is it? Because when he gets back out, he's rolled to his back, and then we hear God say again, he's like, so are you basically like, so are we good? Like you're gonna
Yeah.
take and he's like, what? And he looks over and the vent cover's back on where he had left. He's back inside the same bathroom. He's
Yeah.
just crawled into this weird circle that he can never escape. He's like, you cannot escape this.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do I have to do to get out of here? And he goes, the universe has a favor to ask of you. And he's like, okay, what could it ask of me? Like, what is it? And then he's like, the universe has screwed me over so many times. He goes, why would I do anything for it? And he's like, you repeatedly blame the universe for your problems. Why not take responsibility for your own actions? And he's like, you don't know me. And he's like, we both know that that's not true.
Yeah.
And then we hear Brenda. We see Brenda and we hear her. And she says, what did you do, Wes? And we see Wes start tearing up.
Yeah.
And then, are you going to say something? Did I miss
No.
something? Okay. And then it's like Wes is trying to get almost escape from what's going on by getting into his memories.
Yeah.
And he starts tearing up and we hear God say, focus, Wes. And then he's like, give me a goddamn minute. and finally he's like, well, fine. And then he's with Brenda. Wes is now with Brenda. They're at some sort of like barbecue or something, or
Yeah. It
they're
seemed
somewhere.
like a work thing.
Yeah, it's
Is
like
the impression I got.
yeah, there's just a bunch of people there. They're all standing there holding drinks, look like they're waiting for food, but they're kind of
Yeah.
having weird chit chat. And she's like, you can't be here. She looks at him and says, you can't be here. And then we hear this weird scream, or does she scream? I don't remember. There was screaming. There was a scream.
Well, first Gott says you can't hide in your memories. I need you here. And
Yeah.
then I think it's Gott that screams at Wes.
Okay.
You hear this like loud screeching, and then
Yeah.
Gott yells at him, you will stay here and listen to what I have to say.
That's right. Yeah. And then we hear Brenda say, because he goes back into the memory. He's like, they're struggling at this point, him and God. And Brenda says, you said I was different. And then God says, you said she was different. And then they're at the barbecue and she's like, you said I was different. You said I was different. You said I was different. Over and over and over. She keeps saying it. And it's like going back and forth. And then God says, I told you not to go back there.
Yeah.
And Wes says, this isn't fair. He goes, you have no concept what is and isn't fair. And then they have this like mental war going on back and forth. And we hear this high pitch ringing, like this squeal. And then Wes's ears start bleeding.
Yeah.
And then God finally says, I'll stop. But you can't leave, even to your memories. I need you here.
Yeah.
And then we get story time. He's like, I'm going to tell you a story. And he starts to tell the story of what had happened and the creation of Earth and all the planets in the universe. And then Wes is taking a piss. And the whole story stopped.
Yeah.
And he's just peeing. And God stopped at this point. He's like, Wes says, I'm still listening. So God's like, okay, so where was I? So then this blah, blah, blah. And then he's peeing again.
God's like, unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And then he starts pissing again. He goes, okay, I'm done. And God's kind of like, all right, so the something of time, blah, blah. And he's going through it.
Yeah.
And we see this timeline and there's these drawings on the wall of what had happened. And basically, God's father had these children or whatever. And then throughout something, one of the brothers got killed or something. And then that's where the universe poured out of him or something.
So
I was trying to catch it. Or was it
here? I have it. So he's basically saying that this being not God, but this being that existed it was a being of pure energy in an ocean of nothingness. He says, and he says the being figured out how to give physical form to its thoughts and feelings, right? And that's what all these, like, what he would say his,
offspring.
yeah, basically became his offspring, and it became everything like physical in the universe, I
Yeah.
guess. And then he says that the um like the being ended up not liking these things, and so it's tried to destroy them or something, and then so one of the offspring cut the being, and
That's right.
from out of that being
That
then
being
is what poured all like the stars and all
the
of life and
planets
everything.
and okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And all of humanity and everything. And so basically he says this being hated all that, and he
Yeah.
hated humanity, and so he created another being of one of pure evil, and then God says, I am that
I am that
being.
being.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he went into hiding
Yeah.
because he didn't want to destroy all the stuff with his brothers and sisters. They're all trying to keep it all
Yeah.
and destroy the father being or whatever.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and then conversely, the father being created God to destroy all of the stuff,
Them.
and
Yeah.
God's like, well, no, I started to form a connection with humanity. I don't want to
Yeah.
destroy them.
Yeah. So he went into hiding, and he does not want the father like being coming after him.
Yeah.
So Wes is like, am I in hell? And he's like, well, because everybody has their own version of what hell actually is. And he says, the problem is that he's stuck here, or he's here on Earth, and he's starting to transform or manifest. And once he becomes fully manifested, because he had been cloaked for so long,
Yeah, and he's basically still a being of energy, but he is becoming corporeal.
Yes, thank you.
And the
That was the
moment he
word I was looking
becomes
for,
fully
yeah.
corporeal, he will have to fulfill his father's wishes.
Yes, and
So.
annihilate all of humanity.
Yeah.
And he said the only thing that can help stop the transformation is a part of Wes.
Yeah.
And
He needs a part of Wes to help him satisfy his corporeal needs, basically.
yes. And we see the shot of the glory hole again. And we're like, oh no.
And God says there's only one part of you that can do that.
Yeah,
The
and
glory
you're
hole.
like, oh my word. So Wes at this point then hears a car pull up outside. He gets all excited. But as the driver's pulling up, they put in earbuds, headphones, and it's a DOT inspector, or someone, a supervisor of some sort.
Department of Transportation, if you
Yeah.
happen to not be an American.
Yes. Department of Transport. They're the ones who work on the roads.
And maintain the rest stops, basically.
Yeah. Wes is screaming, help, and got saying, he goes, this will not end well, Wes. He goes, you cannot leave it. You have to stay. This has to happen. And finally, the inspector takes out one of the earbuds, and he hears Wes, after he's cleaned up a bunch of stuff that had been like trash and stuff that's laying around. He takes out one of the earbuds and he hears Wes. And he comes up to the door and he's like, hey, why is this door locked? He goes, I've been trying to get out. And then Got's saying, there will be consequences, Wes. You cannot do this. Do not let this happen. And the DOT guy's like, open the door. And Wes yells at him. He's like, open the door. And he's like, so be it. And Got lets the door open.
Yeah.
The inspector or the supervisor comes in, and the door proceeds to lock behind him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the DOT guy comes in, and he's like, "Why are you blocking the door?"
Yeah.
The thing is, this is a push door. It pushes from the inside, so it's like
outward.
Yeah, it pushes out. I'm like, really, dude?
Yeah, he's
what
not
could he possibly be blocking it with?
He's blocking it with a rope from the inside.
Yeah.
So finally the door opens. Inspector comes in. He's like, what's going on? Blah, 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 all this. And he's like, who's responsible for this? And God says, I am. And he's like, oh, you've got a friend in here with you. I'm sorry, I didn't know. He goes, you know that there's like motels right down the road. You guys can, they're cheap, and all this. He's like, did you sleep in here last night? And all. He goes, it's a long story. It's I was drunk and I passed out and blah, blah. And finally, we get the guy's name's Gary, the DOT guy. And Gary's like, all right, you need to open up the door because he can't get out. He's like, you need to open the door. And he's like, I can't. God says, you're a part of this now, Gary. And Gary's like, I'm going to call the cops. And he grabs Wes in a headlock and he gets on the phone with the police, or he's trying to call the police. And he's like, hang up the phone, Gary. And God's just like, hang up the phone. And you hear the phone ringing. And finally, through the phone, you hear God going, hang up the phone.
Yeah.
Through the phone. And Gary brings the phone down and he's like, what is happening? He's like, I told you. He goes, this cannot end well. And he goes, and he said, you are part of this. And he says, but you cannot leave here. You've seen too much of what's going on. And I can't have you tell anybody.
Yeah.
And he says, Wes, step into the stall and I'll take care of everything. And Wes is like, what are you going to do? He's like, step into the stall. And at this point, he gets into the stall and closes the door. And you hear the stall door from next door open, the next stall open. And these weird noises. And then you hear Gary say, oh my God. And then God says, yes. And then there's noises and ripping and tearing. And then Gary's like trying to get inside of Wes's stall with him. And then he's dragged back out. And then we hear crunch, tear.
Yeah. You're seeing like that bulbous sack, like tentacles and stuff are flying out of it. You just see all
moving
these.
yeah. There's just a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Through like a crack in the stall door. You're just seeing like all this movement. And then it just goes quiet.
Yeah.
And at this point, Wes is like up on the toilet.
Yeah.
He's like crouched up on it. And then we hear like this angelic type music. And like a mist rain of blood is just coming down.
Yeah.
It's
a very, very fine mist slowly.
Yeah. And it's covering everything.
Yeah.
And the picture, it had fallen back out at this point. It's on the ground. It's getting covered in blood. The walls, Wes, everything. Everything's being covered in blood. And then splat. Gary's heart just falls on the floor right in front of Wes.
Still
the music's gone and the heart's still beating. Boom, boom, boom,
yeah.
boom, boom. The beating then fades, like crossfades into a flashback of the chest of a woman, her breastises. And we're back at that barbecue, but it's another woman. It's not Brenda. Wes is eyeing her, and Brenda kind of catches him, and she's like, stalking her much?
Yeah.
And he's like, what? And she's like, stalking her much? Like, are you? And she's like, she's not, you're not her type anyway. And all this sort of stuff. And they kind of have this back and forth little banter and everything. You're like, what's going on? And then we find out this is the time when they first met.
Yeah.
And we see that there's a connection between the two of them. And then Gott says something about humans, and he's like, they're fascinating. He goes, they're here one moment and then gone the next. He goes, well, we both learned something from this.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is that? And he goes, what my corporeal form is capable of.
Yeah. And then you get better shots of the entire room.
The bathroom, yeah.
The entire restroom, and it is absolutely drenched in blood and guts.
Blood and guts.
And body parts.
Eyeballs in the sink. Yeah. And it's just a leg, and I was like, was that the one from Cocaine Bear?
Yeah.
It's the same. Can we borrow that leg? So he's like, I apologize for the mess. And finally, Wes is at the point, he's like, what do I need to do to end this nightmare?
Yeah, specifically.
Yeah, specifically. And God says, you need to satisfy my physical form. And he goes, and that's it? And he goes, that's it. And he looks at the glory hole and he's like, I don't think I can. And then you see a light shine through it.
Yeah.
And he goes, I believe you can. I believe you will rise to the occasion. And you're like, oh my.
Oh, man.
Oh, it's like, seriously, we're going to go to those kinds of jokes. And he goes, once your part of the ritual is complete, I will let go of my grasp on you. I will let you go.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, like at this point, Wes is like, he's like dancing around the room and he's like, he's like trying to psych himself up. He's like, come on, Wes. It's for the universe, Wes.
Yeah, it's for the universe. And he's got this like internal struggle going on. And finally he's just like, F it. And he just walks up to it. And he's like, and he pulls his pants down and sticks his manhood, his junk through the hole. And then we hear Gott say, what the hell is that? And he's like, huh? And he goes, you thought your human penis was going to save the universe? He goes, well, I thought, and he goes, your genitals are of no significance. And he goes, well, you don't have to be mean about it. And, like, gets away from the wall. And he goes, so what do you want from me then? And he goes, I need your liver, Wes. It's like, what? That's a random thing for him to just... And he's like, how? How am I supposed to do that? He goes, do you have a doctor in there with you or something? And he goes, I'm afraid not. And then you see this shard of broken mirror come sliding out from the stall.
Yeah.
And he goes, the sacrifice must be made by you willingly.
Yeah.
Wes is like, you're nuts.
And Gat's like, I just need a small part of it. I don't need the whole thing.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. He's
and,
just like, a human can survive with like 25%, I think is what he said.
Wes is like, I can't do that. And God says, might I remind you, you were perfectly willing to give me your penis a moment ago.
Yeah. And he goes, but I wasn't giving it to you. It was just like, yeah. He's like, you're nuts. Yeah. And he's like, a moment of pain to save all of humanity. He goes, stop being selfish.
Yeah.
And Wes is like, all people are selfish. And he goes, he says something, Gat says something about selfless acts. Not all of you are all selfish and all this. And Wes is getting mad at this point. He's getting frustrated. He goes, let me now tell you a story. And Got saying, he's like, we don't have time. Because he knows his time's running out.
Yeah.
And he goes, if you want my liver, you're going to listen. And he basically goes into the story about how his dad worked and didn't let his mom work at all. And it wasn't because he just wanted to take care of the family. He wanted to hold power over the family.
Yeah.
To say, I'm the only one who makes the money. What I say goes. You can't have any say in it. He would cheat on the mom, beat her, do all this other sort of stuff. But it was all in this, I'm the one who takes care of this family so I can do whatever I want.
He didn't want, basically, the dad didn't want the mom to be able to have any sort of independence.
Exactly.
At all.
Yeah.
And I just had to put a little note here as, oh, okay, I know people like that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The mom then proceeds to kill herself.
Yeah.
And right after she died, the dad said, the first thing the dad says to Wes was, "Son, your mom was a selfish woman."
Yeah.
And then God says, "Wes, we don't have time. He's here."
Yeah.
And then he goes,
You
all
also,
what?
I was gonna say, at this point too, like while Wes is talking, you start to see, like all the blood and guts that are in the room, they start to drip like upward.
Yeah, they're
They,
going up.
yeah,
The
it's,
walls are shaking. Plaster's starting to break.
yeah,
There's like these claw or tendril things coming through the walls.
yeah,
Um, and Wes says that he goes, unselfish acts, you know, a lot of unselfish acts have ulterior motives,
yeah,
and he's like, this is about dominance. He goes, it's nothing more than that. It's you want control, you want the dominance, and that's why you're doing this. And God says to Wes, he goes, don't you want to feel good about something in your life? Wes says, I stopped feeling a long time ago. And God says, he's close, Wes. And this hole has opened up in the wall at this point, and we
hmm,
see like the universe, like
yeah,
just vastness and stars and what we call outer space.
yeah,
And Wes looks through the hole and he goes, it's kind of beautiful. He goes, the vast expanse of nothing. And God says, what you said wasn't true. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, that you haven't felt anything. You're feeling something right now and it frightens you. He goes, would you do it for her? And you see flashes of Brenda
yeah,
again. And he says, I thought she was perfect, the one, but she wasn't. She was just like all the others. Wow, that takes on a different meaning right now.
hmm, yeah,
Uh, yeah. And God says she was hurt, heartbroken. She was devastated, and you broke her heart. You're
yeah.
like, what did he do?
I
You know.
know. When at this point,
Um,
it's like, oh, geez, that like he cheated on her. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he
because
cheated on her, and did she kick him out, or did she kill herself? And you know,
of the story that he just told and all
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
now, I don't know if it was any sort of significance or not, but I did see a red light way off in the distance of the nothingness now coming
hmm,
closer at this point. And I'm thinking that after a little bit, now I know what the red light is.
yeah,
Um, Wes then storms into the stall that he's been in and looks into the hole and just yells out, F you! And he looks eye to eye with God.
yeah,
And then he sees like this eye thing looking back at him, and then he gets sucked into this black void, and it's just darkness all around
yeah,
him, just black. And he's looking around, and we see that teddy bear that he was holding earlier,
yeah. A giant version of it, though.
this huge version of it,
Yeah,
and it starts walking towards him. It's moving, so it's like a costume. It's like,
yeah,
if you went to an amusement park and you see someone in one of those costumes, and it's like, I love you very, very much. And it keeps walking towards him. He's like, I love you very, very. And it starts getting like more and more menacing sounding as it's going. And then it goes, I love you very much, and rips its belly open. And it's
yeah,
like this lining inside of it and everything. And then he takes Wes's head and like shoves him inside of his own stomach.
yeah,
And then Wes wakes up back on the stall floor. He says, I've never felt that much pain like that in all my life. And God says, it was the smallest fraction of what I'm capable of.
yeah,
I'm sorry about that, but I warned you. And then at this point, Wes starts to kind of go crazy.
Yeah.
He's like, there's no way out of this type thing. And
Yeah.
he starts laughing maniacally while looking in the mirror. And God says, "You're wasting time with all these games. We have to do this now." He goes, "Well, then let's pick up the pace then."
Yeah.
And he yells out, "Daddy! Daddy! You're looking for your boy? Well, he's right here. Come find him." And then you hear this like rumbling noise.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What was that?" And God says, "He found us."
Yeah.
And the hole breaks open larger, and we see the dad,
Yeah.
whatever being. And
Yeah,
things
and
are
it's
being,
like this, like it's octopus like,
yeah,
right? But it has this like giant eyeball, and then it's surrounded by tentacles, and
yeah,
it's just like out there hovering in space,
yeah,
like getting closer and closer.
very alien, floaty
Yeah.
Cthulhu, and Mike Wazowski.
Yeah.
But it's just like shaking everything, and then stuff's getting sucked towards it. Like, if there's a hole in the side of an airplane, things are just getting like pulled out of it and everything out
Yeah.
into the void. And during all this, Wes is like crawling, and he crawls back into the stall and closes the door. And God says, "I can't protect us much longer. It doesn't have to end like this. Her memory has to mean something. If the world goes away, she goes away with it.
Yeah.
No one to remember her. Memories are curious. They fade over time or can be taken from you." He goes, "A face you once remembered so clearly, gone." And we see during all this like flashbacks of her and Wes and all this. And then she looks at Wes in one of the flashbacks, and her face is all blurred out.
Yeah.
It's like gone. And then he's like, no, she can't be. And he looks down at the picture, and she's gone from the picture. And Wes is sitting there on the floor crying at this point. And he goes, please let me see her one more time, and I will do whatever you ask. And God says, "Very well." And then we get a flashback of a time when they were together, and she gives him a gift for their 3-month, 10-day, something or other hour anniversary thing. It's just kind of a cute moment.
Yeah.
And she gives him this teddy bear, and he presses it, and it goes, "I love you very much." And she goes, I think it's speaking for both of us. Like she's saying that she's in love with him.
Yeah.
And Wes says she was happy. He goes, "I was happy with her." And God says, "All those raw emotions locked away within you, that's what I need from you. Let her live on." And Wes grabs the mirror piece. Daddy rages on outside, screaming. And Wes says, "Will it hurt?" And God says, "Very much."
Yeah.
And he's like, and he goes to plunge it into his stomach, and then everything stops, and God goes, "It's on the other side, Wes." He goes, and he looks down at himself and he goes, "Oh." And he moves it over, and he's like, and then he like jabs it into himself, and he's like, and he's screaming, and we get all these memories during this time and all this sort of stuff, and he's in agony, and he's screaming and all this. And then all of a sudden it stops, and we're in this flashback with Brenda holding that red box.
Yeah.
And she goes, "What's this?" And she opens it up. And Wes looks like he's getting dressed, like they're getting ready to go somewhere. And he's tightening up his tie and all this. And she's like, "What is this?" And she opens it up, and there's all these pictures of other women. And it looks like they're having things done to them against their will.
Yeah. They are.
They're in fear.
Pictures. They're screaming. They're in fear. They're crying.
Yeah. And then I was like, "Oh, they were killed." And Wes, she looks up at Wes, and Wes is standing there holding a knife, a chef's knife, like a kitchen knife. And he just kind of smiles. And you're like, "Oh, this dude's sadistic. Like he's killing these women, and this is the moment that he stabs them. he takes a picture.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is messed up. And then they're in that void thing again, and then her hands come over his shoulders, and then you see all these other women's hands come around him as he's like like stabbing himself with the mirror thing, and she pulls the mirror thing away and reaches into his stomach, and she's going for his liver, and then it comes flashes back into the bathroom, and we see Gott has now reached this tentacle through the hole, and
Yeah.
it's going into the hole in the side of Wes, and it's like eating at that liver, and then they're screaming and feeding and all that, and then finally it's like over, and Wes stumbles out onto the
Yeah.
floor of the bathroom.
Well, and you see too, like Gat just rips out his whole liver.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there was no taking a small sliver of it. He just yanks the whole
Yep.
thing right out.
When it comes to the liver, you don't just take a small sliver. It's kind of
right.
like the Pringles commercial. Once you pop, you can't stop. A light starts to glow from Gott's stall, and then the door opens, and we see him in all of his gory. Not glory, in his gory.
Yeah.
And then we hear this screeching, and then slam.
Yeah.
And Wes is laying on the bathroom floor, and the only part that's bloody now is where he's laying.
Yeah. What we saw too of like Gat, it's a really great depiction of like a cosmic horror entity, because it's fleshy and there's eyeballs and tentacles and just these like bulbous things, but that's
very
not even a good
Cronenberg
description. Yeah.
Very Cronenberg, less Jordan Peele.
Yeah. And I mean, good cosmic horror will present these things in a way that is just almost undescribable.
Yeah. It was grotesque. It's grotesque looking.
Yeah.
It looks like if you had a booger wrapped with lint and it was found in your belly button, that's what it would be.
Okay, sure.
Mm-hmm. So he's laying on the bathroom floor by himself. Yeah. Rest of the room is clean and he's still bleeding out at this point. Yeah. And we hear Gott say, "It is finished. I've returned to the ether. The threat is past." And Wes gets up and he's like, "Oh, it's done." He's like, "I'm a hero.
It's like, I saved the universe. I'm a hero.
I'm a hero." And Gott says, "No, heroes are remembered. You will be forgotten. Yeah. It's what you deserve. It's what we both deserve. We are beings of pure destruction, and we don't belong in this beautiful world. Goodbye, Wes." And Wes proceeds to like struggle out of the bathroom and gets outside. It's daytime, and he crawls to where that bear is lying on the ground next to the fire pit. Yeah. And he pushes the button on it, and it's like, "I love you."
Yeah.
And it dies.
And you get this like, there's some like weird guttural screeching too.
Yeah.
Out of the bear. It's
and then weird. Wes dies too.
Yeah.
And then the camera zooms out into space, and then it zooms out of the galaxy and out of the known universe. Yeah. And it just kind of shows how small we are.
Yep.
And credits.
That's it.
That was the end.
Yep.
Drum roll. What'd you think of this film, sir?
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah?
Yeah. It
is right up your alley.
It is right up my alley, and I would argue it's actually more of what I like in regards to cosmic horror compared to something like The Outwaters, which descends into cosmic horror, but was also kind of like, what is going on? Whereas this one is there's really no questions about what's going on. This is happening.
Yeah.
And I think, it was humorous, it was comical, I
Yeah.
don't, which I was fine with. I don't necessarily think that's necessary for cosmic horror.
Yeah.
I would also often argue that it kind of detracts from cosmic horror, but I don't think it did in this case. I mean, there were parts where maybe some of the writing and some of the acting wasn't top notch, but but overall, I had a great time with this film. I really liked it. It was,
Yep.
yeah,
Nice.
worked for me. What about you, man? What did you think?
Um, I would have to say that of the films that we have watched so far this year, it's one of the top that
Yeah,
I've seen. It was good. It was such a well done film. It didn't deviate from where it was going. It
mm,
was solid from start to finish. Um, J.K. Simmons did an incredible job, even though you never
yeah,
saw him. It was just hearing him,
yeah,
and the way that he conveyed the not only the urgency, but also the um I don't know, there was like this all knowing but not quite knowing all at the same time. So it was like this God who knows, but then it was like still trying to figure stuff out all at the
yeah,
same time. I don't know, it was just the way it was written, they did a great job with it.
yeah. Yeah, because the character he really does display this sort of like, there's a very dark power there that is
Yeah.
desperately trying to contain itself.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That
And
is very good.
where you might argue it deviates from cosmic horror, would be that I would argue that in a true cosmic horror, that being would not care at all for humanity,
Yeah.
right? And and not that it hates humanity, it really just doesn't care. It's
Yeah.
humanity is nothing to these creatures,
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I still thought it was great,
And
and
see,
Simmons did such a fantastic
yeah.
job of capturing that character.
Yeah. And see, here's another take on that too though. Do you think that God really cared about humanity, or do you think he enjoyed this game?
I think that
Because
enjoying,
this happened more than once. This has happened many, many times from what I would gather.
yeah, I didn't really think about that, but it's possible, and I
That
would
I mean,
say
he
too,
enjoys, because you think about all these people who say, "Oh, I heard God speaking to me," and he was like, "Oh, you have to cut out your own liver and all this sort
hmm,
of stuff," and then they die and all that sort of stuff. And it's some person who had like all this horrible stuff going on for him, and they end up dying in a rest stop bathroom or whatever, and
yeah,
all this. And it's like, okay, you look at it and go, how many people are like, "Oh, this guy was crazy and killed himself," but how many times do you think that this guy's done this,
yeah,
and he's running away from this other being who not only would just have him destroy all humanity, but then he'd be destroyed probably himself.
yeah. He would no longer have a
Yeah.
purpose,
So
right?
do you
I
really think
think,
like he was trying to protect humanity, or do you think it was more so I'm just trying to protect myself?
yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that where it was definitely more of a like a self preservation.
Because even the part with him being selfish has ulterior motive, or unselfish
Hmm.
has ulterior motives.
Yeah,
So this whole thing about him having to do all this, and
yeah,
he doesn't want to take out humanity. I'm trying not to be selfish. Well, maybe it takes it this whole other level. Maybe he had ulterior
yeah,
motives. I don't know.
yeah.
There's so much more to it than
And I mean, he did. Yeah, there is at one point where earlier in the film, Wes is like, if I do this, will you let me leave? And Gott says, I don't want to make a promise like that I can't keep.
yeah,
Right. But then
yeah,
he does tell Wes, I just need a sliver.
yeah,
And then clearly that was a lie because he just
yeah. He
goes in
took
and
the whole
takes the whole
thing.
thing. And then
Yeah,
he's just straight up, like almost at the end when he's telling Wes, you're not a hero. He's
yeah.
almost like,
Screw you. Ha ha
yeah,
ha.
basically.
I'm out.
I mean, yeah,
Deuces.
he does say, that.
we don't deserve to
we
be
don't
here.
deserve here. Yeah.
Sucker.
So he definitely played Wes.
Yeah.
But
so I don't know. I really liked it. I liked it. I liked
I did
this
too.
one way better than the Outwaters. I like this as a representation of cosmic horror, and
this is I think a good take. Not the only possible take, but a very good take on what cosmic horror can be.
This is a little bit closer to the cosmic horror type stuff, like the those two guys. I feel so horrible, but my brain is like so bad right now. They did Something in the Dirt.
Oh yeah, and Moorhead and
yeah. Sorry, guys.
Benson.
Benson and Aaron Benson, or Aaron Moorhead and
Justin
Benson.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
and I would even say though that now I should know, I haven't seen Something in the Dirt yet, but even their stuff is really pulls back and leaves a lot more of the mystery. Because this one, it's pretty much out there what's going on,
Yes,
and sometimes much. That's not always how it is with cosmic horror. A lot of times with cosmic horror is you really don't know, and the less you know, the better. So
I love that song, by the way, by Tame Impala. The less you know,
never heard of it.
I'm now that I'm thinking about it, the girl who is in that music video, she looks kind of like Mia Goth. Now that I'm thinking about it,
okay.
I might look that up here in a little bit. Anyway, if you guys have seen this film, let us know what you guys think. See, I'm not all anti-cosmic horror. I liked this one. I liked it a lot. So, anyway, let us know what you guys thought of it. Put it down in the comments. Make sure while you guys are down there, hit like and subscribe. Did you have anything else to say about this one?
No, I'm good. I liked it. I highly recommend it. I'll probably watch it again.
I think I will too. Not having to take notes.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a little over an hour long. It's like an hour and 15, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like 75 minutes long. If you don't have a whole lot of time to watch a movie, it's definitely one you could just throw on. Again, this is on Shudder, so you guys can check it out there. Some other films you might be able to check out on Shudder that'll be coming up. It could be coming up right here on the screen. These are films that will be coming out in the next month or so, either to theaters or on demand. Also on Blu-ray as well, and whatever else you guys get your viewing jollies off on.
Please let us know if there's anything on this list you'd like us to cover.
Yeah, do that. You guys can write us too at castersofhorror@gmail.com or on any of our social media at Casters of Horror. Next segment, let's get into a little bit of real life horror stories. This is a little story time that we like to do that tells you guys stories of things that have happened here in the real world that are horrific. And I decided to freak people out a little bit more about going to rest stops. So, so I'm taking us all the way back to the year 1979. A 31-year-old nurse, Jane Snow, left her home in Grand Rapids, Michigan, along with her two young sons, aged 8 and 9. That evening, Jane was driving northbound on Interstate 75 when she decided to pull over at the Loon Lake Rest area just outside of Gaylord, Michigan. Jane headed for the ladies' room while her sons used the men's room, but Jane did not exit the ladies' room for a long time, and her sons decided to check in on her. They were horrified to find that their mother had been murdered, laying on the floor, stabbed 23 times.
Oh my gosh.
The boys were able to flag down a passing motorist for help, but at no point did they see the mother's killer. So, never came out while they were waiting out there. Around the same time, a state trooper was driving southbound on Interstate 75, picked up a hitchhiker less than 1 kilometer from the rest area. Trooper noticed some scratches on the man's hand, but he was unaware that the murder had occurred nearby. He soon dropped the hitchhiker off, but took his name and his address just in case. The suspect's name was John McGowley. We're going to call him out right here. And he had an outstanding warrant for a bad check charge in Rhode Island. McGowley was eventually picked up and questioned about Jane Snow's murder. That night, he had been in a bar in a nearby Indian River and left in a rage after a fight with his wife. When McGowley was tracked down by police, he was wearing a shirt with bloodstains on it, but subsequent tests determined that the blood did not belong to Jane. Don't know how they had subsequent tests, considering how they did not have DNA tests back then. Yeah. Ultimately, there was not enough evidence to charge McGowley with the murder, and it continues to remain unsolved more than 43 years later.
See, that's interesting because now that we do have DNA testing, they could easily do that, and
they could.
Maybe that's what they mean, is that there wasn't enough evidence at the time, and then now,
now
who knows? The ability
to, and with the fact that how much it costs, how much, how many cases are out there, cold cases that. My wife actually, she watches a cold case murder podcast. Oh, yeah. And they go through all these things, and the two people who do the show, they have their own coffee line. They make their own coffee, and all the proceeds from it goes towards DNA testing for cold case crimes or cases that don't have the funding to be able to have the stuff done for them. So
yeah,
I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But if you guys have a true life or real life horror story, write it into us. castersofhorror@gmail.com once again, or you can put it down in the comments below. But if you do that, it'll spoil it for everybody else. So why do that? Before we leave, we like to do a little bit of pick or pass. This is a quick segment to tell you guys something that we've watched in the last week or recently that we think you guys should check out. We tell you whether or not you guys should pick it up or pass on it. Shane, I'm going to let you start, sir.
While
I look up that music video.
You correctly called that this was going to be my pick this week, because I put on Twitter that I recently, this week I watched a movie. I actually watched it on Shudder. It's called The Dark and the Wicked. This is a movie that came out in 2020 from AMC Plus, which is something that I just now discovered was a thing that exists, apparently.
Okay.
This is about a brother and sister who return home when they find that their father is dying. Their mother seems to say that they should have never come and they should leave immediately. And the longer they're there, the more strange and very dark, messed up things start to happen around the house. And it, wow, yes, I called this one incredibly scary and bleak, and it is. And there are a ton of jump scares in this movie, so be warned.
Nice.
But yeah, I really like this one. This one is definitely my pick of the week, and highly, highly recommended.
Yeah, that's when I saw that you said a movie had a bunch of jump scares that got you, I was like, yep, that's for sure going to be his pick.
Yeah. And I do think, and I mentioned on Twitter, it might be a little over-reliant on jump scares, because I think so many movies, like, that's all they are. It's just jump scares, and that's why it's a horror movie, because it's
called Jump Scare the movie.
Yeah. And while this one does have a ton of them, the movie itself, just the tone of it is very, very dark and bleak and tense. It's very tense. So it's very, very well done. And
nice.
Yeah.
And where can people check that one out again?
You can, right now it's available on Shudder, so you can check that out. The Dark and the Wicked.
The Dark and the Wicked.
Yep.
Cool. Very, very cool.
What you got this week?
I have a pick. I haven't had a whole lot of time this week, and there's a film that I like to throw on every once in a while just to kind of have it playing. So I'm going to talk about a one that's a definite pick for me. That you can that I don't know. It's fun. It's stupid. Just put it on. It's on Tubi TV. .com. If you guys are familiar with Tubi, a bunch of free movies and whatnot. It's a little film called Zombievers. It is about some zombie beavers that attack a group of campers, some really hot chicks, and some good looking dudes if you're into that. But it just, yeah, zombie beavers, man.
Yeah.
It goes there. So I love this film.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's one that I like to just put on and just have playing. So it's a definite pick for me. It's one of those what do you call that? Guilty pleasure type movies.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, it's so good. So yeah, check it out. It's on Tubi. Tubi. You guys can check it out there. Zombievers. Go watch it. I forgot what the tagline was for it. It had such a great tagline. Yeah. While I'm looking up the tag, oh, by the way, yes, it was not Mia Goth in that one. But what film, sir, are we doing next while I look up what this tagline for Zombievers is?
All right, well, next week we will be talking about American Carnage.
Yeah.
And we'll also be watching a movie called American Carnage.
Exactly. Yeah, American Carnage, if you guys aren't familiar with that one, this is, it's got Jenna Ortega in it, which she's everywhere right now, but this is right before, I don't remember if it was before,
X?
Before she did X or not. I don't remember. But anyway, it was definitely before she did that's there it is. Okay. It was definitely before she did Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, Jenna Ortega's in it. It looks to be good. Yeah. Looks to be really good. So we'll be checking that one out. So it's a bit of zombie-esque fun from what I've heard.
Cool.
So yeah, little Jenna Ortega horror, and the tagline for Zombievers was, "They'll damn you to hell." Beavers, they'll damn you to hell.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that one took me a second.
Yeah, Beaver Dam. Yes. I knew it. I was like, I know it's hilarious. I just couldn't remember what it was. But yeah, next week, yes, American Carnage. So anyway, join us for that one. Make sure you guys hit like and subscribe before we're out of here, or do it afterwards. I don't care. Just do it.
Just do
like, subscribe, tell somebody about this, whether you're friends, enemies, as long as you're telling somebody, I don't care. So anyway, yeah, until next week, people, I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane. See ya.
Get the hell out of here. We'll see you guys.